Hey, you are back, and we are on, I have to look down to see, we're on week 7. And this is the Fable week of Pink from Pinkton. And this is probably one of the fables I actually struggle with to describe the most. And I feel like it's a challenging one for me to describe when I actually tell the story, because there's a lot more to the story than just the, it's about this. In other words, it's a little bit more involved energetically. So I'm going to get right into it. Okay, so when we look at the discovery card, and as you can see, I am still loving my Spanish version of the deck. And just to let you know, just so you know, like this is the box right there for the Spanish deck, and of course over here is the original, meaning the English version. So the actual box is a little different, the card's bigger. So this is Pink from Pinkton. Now, what do you notice? You see the great servant in the background, and that becomes important. The other thing to notice here is that Pink also has a heart, right? And if you look at the way he's standing, like with an open heart, and of course the moon and the stars. So, and what's interesting is the flower blooming even at night. So one of the things I want to say is that I'll probably throughout this point out different things, and you'll get to see different, different ideas as I go along. So the first thing that becomes very important in this particular fable is the quote from the fable is, "I am more than I think I am." And when I look to encapsulate what it is sometimes we don't recognize how much courage and strength we have until we're really, it's kind of in the field, in the front lines, in the firing line. And so if we look at where we've just come from, the prior week, where we looked at Demon Red Rainbow, and now we look at Rose Without Thorns. So something you want to look at here is in Rose Without Thorns. A rose, remember I talked to you about this. Now when we go and look at the symbolism again of, sorry, when I'm saying like the Rose Without Thorns, I'm talking about Pink from Pinkton, but I'm looking at the rose here. So when we look at the rose on the card, and I do think it's a rose, that's my opinion. You might think it's a carnation. I've had people say both to me. Oh, it looks like a foxglove. Okay. So that just proves I'm tired. Okay, so we're gonna move on. So the thing I wanna say about this though is that Pink from Pinkton is a story of pink. And in order to really describe what's going on, I have to say that it's the story of availability and not available, right? Because a lot of times when we're talking about love or relationships, we say, oh, that person's not available. Oh, that person is available. Well, if you notice throughout this, and now I'm remembering why I'm talking Rose Without Thorns, is because everything is our mirror as we go along. So when we go back to the idea of Rose Without Thorns and the power of the rose, the idea there is that this young man in Rose Without Thorns had his mirror show up. That's why he had to change. When his mirror of this woman who was like, she was just loving him, right? That's his mirror. And he can't be the detached person when his mirror is something else. So what I'm trying to say is that, when people say, oh, that person's not available, it's like, you picked him. So where is your disconnect? Where are you not available? And I think that's really the key to this. And it's fine to say, oh, I guess I'm not available. Totally fine. When we look at Pink from Pinkton in the fable initially, his girlfriend, Petunia, he is in relationship with her, and she's in upset because he's constantly too busy and unavailable for her. So she says, you're not available. And after time, she breaks up with him, and he's heartbroken. And he wants to get her back, and he does a lot of personal work, tons and tons and tons of personal work. And some of you may relate to this. And he gets well. So have you ever broken up with somebody and said, I'm going to make myself 100 times better so that I can get this back? Well, the thing that happens in Pink is that he gets better. And he even goes up the mountain to meet with the great servant is there. And the thing that happens is that he must recognize that he wasn't the only one who was unavailable. She was too. So when he goes back to try and rekindle something, she's the one who's not available. So when we look at it that way, we realize that water seeks its own level in the sense that here we are going to seek out, and this is a little bit of a stretch, we're going to seek out that wounding we had from our family of origin, which is, in this case, it really talks about, I think energetically, the wounding of the parents, right? So if the parents, whatever we took on, like, you know, if our parents fought or if they had, you know, a bad relationship. I even dealt with a woman who had a good relationship and she couldn't figure out what was wrong. But that's like a real multi-generational healing thing because it skips a generation. So when we look at this, and particularly root chakra material here, we really look at him protecting himself. And when he does the work, he realizes he doesn't need to protect himself anymore because he is available. And the heartbreak of that is that he has grown so much, he's outgrown his past. So there is a sadness that happens when we are too healthy for the drama of our past. Think about that for a minute. You know, when we look at it that way, we can look at it as, oh, I'm no longer that person. You're not that person anymore. And there's a sadness to that, because when you recognize that you're no longer the person who can be with somebody that is in any way abusive, whether it's unavailable, not paying attention, whatever that is, when you recognize that, there is a sadness to that because you've outgrown it. And so you can't go back to what once was. So in many ways for me, that's what Pink is about. So even though I've kind of gone around, like I took you in a circuitous route here, it really is that, you know, Pink, and this is just my own sense, that, you know, he's done the work. And so the thing is, which character are you playing? Are you Pink himself, where you're the person that's saying, you know what, I've done all this work and I just wish this other person was healthy enough. And, you know, sometimes what happens is that we get so healthy that we can't be with someone that's not healthy. And we get mirrors of that. We get to see where we are by the people showing up in our lives. And so are you Pink or are you Petunia, saying, you know what, this person's not available, this person's not available, and then ultimately recognizing that you may not be available. And what I find is, if I'm saying, I am saying that person's not available, chances are something in me is not available as well. So when I'm saying, you know, I noticed something recently that I was like, wow, you know, this person that I was, somebody I was starting to date, I recognized very passive aggressive behavior. And I thought, you know, that's not okay with me and I'm not going to be around it. And, you know, I had to go into gee, is it me that's being passive aggressive? And then I recognized, no, it's me spotting it, meaning I got it. So I know what it is. I'm not foolish, but it also means I'm not going to get into that arena to try and show or change that person. I'm going to really honor who he is the way he is and not try to change that. So what that does is it kind of says to the universe, oh, she's a little healthier. She might need something better, you know? So every no does lead to a better yes. And that is the crux, I believe, of the Pink from Pinkton fable. So when we look at this for you, remember what I'm saying. Which character are you? And the thing about the great servant is, in this case, you know, we would look at the great servant as, are you witnessing one of your children going through this with an unavailable spouse? Are you the person saying, supporting someone to get away from a circumstance that isn't healthy and you see it? So then we have to say, okay, if you're playing that role, what is it you need to learn from each of these characters? Because if you're removed and seeing this played out, you're witnessing it, so therefore you must know something about these two characters. So we look at the characters in the fable, which is why the fable becomes important. We attribute the qualities to ourselves and we go, okay, what in myself is playing that out? Because what happens then is that if you want to use these cards as a reading for others, you're going to have a personal experience with it. And you're going to see at least 3 different meanings from this conversation. There's another 7 when we get into the aspects in the more advanced study, but it gets easier because you take steps into it and all of a sudden it's second nature. And it's really amazing to me to watch like people who, I've worked with maybe for a couple of years now, and I've watched them go from, I don't know how to get out of this bad relationship, to just being so clear on their life and really getting excited when they share in groups and seeing them go and going, that's right, she did it. I don't have to say anything, So when you see that happening, you know that this material is working on its own. And that's where I get excited. And that's where I want to hear from you. So make sure you post below and give me some insight into what's going on for you with this journey. And please feel free to ask questions on YouTube. That's where I'm going to be answering the questions directly. And the thing to be, the 2 points that are made here, that it's like a trapeze artist. When you imagine you're on the platform and the other person is on the trapeze coming toward you, and you grab the trapeze and you swing out, at some point energetically you need to let go and flip into the air and reach, and the hands of God grab you. And that's what the great servant is here. It's like you have to risk getting better, because the risk of getting better far outweighs the consequences of never getting off that platform. So when we look at that, it is a risk to take these chances, to say, I'm going to do this improvement. And even if this other person can't, because they go or they grow. And that's what this really brings up in a strong way. The other thing, and forgive me for putting on my glasses so much, but there's a sentence in here. It says, remember what you plant now determines your crop later. And I think that's a key to this. And yet there's something else I want to say about that. It's always in a 90-day cycle, 90 days. So what you start today will show up in your life as some crop that's beginning to grow visible in 90 days. So, they say it takes 3 weeks. They say, meaning studies that I've read, it takes about 3 weeks to break a habit. And I think it takes 90 days, the 3 months, from sowing your seed to when it starts to grow. So this is a whole new seed. This is a crop of seeds you're planting. 6th chakra, 6th sense. What do you think this fable is? It's the 6th fable. It's an intuitive fable. It's about you intuitively knowing when something isn't healthy. It's intuitively knowing when you might have to walk away. So this is about having that wisdom and that knowing. And how much more gentle is it when you're able to, and when I started with this work, a lot of times I would just tell my client the fable, because what happened was I told them the story, stories resonate. And what happens is, as you play with this, you go, yeah, I have a story about something like this that's my own story, and that may be something you get to relate to. And so when you're working with yourself or others, you'll be able to share your path with this story. So that becomes important as well. Now, you all know, I wrote a little bit in here. Let me see. I have some new notes. See, I put some new notes. So I have some new notes in here. Okay. The set your intention for the week. Remember, these are cumulative and they're slightly different than the prior week. So the question this week of setting the intention is, are you trying to recapture something that you've outgrown? And is there something in there? And it may not be the intention you're doing. You may have an intention, I'm on writing a book because that's in my brain, but you may have an intention to go to nursing school, right? And that says, and here it says, are you trying to recapture something that perhaps no longer works? And you're like, well, I really do want to go to nursing school. Well, maybe it means an old way of approaching something, maybe old study habits. You know, maybe you can't study the way you used to study. You have to do it at different times. Remember that you have evolved when this fable shows up. When you're looking at this, this is a fable of sixth chakra, sixth sense, spiritual evolution. This is a spiritual conversation that we're having. So remember that it may not be as literal as you think. And that becomes important in this, because when we look at this discovery, this may not be the kind of discovery you think it is. It may be a discovery that's completely out of left field, and it may not be what you want, but it's exactly what you need. So a couple more things. Remember, what does Passion Pink say to you? We're going to look at the color. It's a very strong color. And I'm not going to go further with that because you're going to read this. And then it says, complete this statement in your writing. This is the journal journey. Because I let go of blank, I was able to create blank. So you want to go back in your history and look at a time when you walked away from something that allowed you to create something else. You know, and for me, you know, I can look at several instances where, because I walked away from a certain relationship or friendship or business connection, I was able to create something better. And it's very funny. I want to share this with you because it relates. You know, when I started out, I had an agent that didn't like me. And I didn't care that she didn't like me because she was breathing and she was an agent, and agents are agents. And, you know, I didn't realize that selling my own book was like, you know, through my own people I knew, was not what it was supposed to happen. She was supposed to sell it, but she didn't like me. She didn't like my work, you know? And finally we just went, and we went in different ways, and I kept trying to write and catch on to things. And anyway, cut to the year that I went to the London Book Fair and met with Watkins. And the first thing that my publisher said to me was, oh my God, I love your work. I can't believe, like, I watch how you are, I watch your stuff, and I think it's great. And I'm going, well, that's interesting. So, right. So when I let go, now this is a long gap, but I let go of somebody that didn't like me, and I attracted people that did like me. My agent now likes me. So the thing that's a growth for me. And why did I care if the person liked me or not? Well, if they like me, I'm going to get to work with them and have fun. Well, that was part of the story. The other part of the story is I went upstairs to the foreign rights, because there was a whole foreign rights area. And I was looking at the program, and I saw my original agent, the one who didn't like me. And I was like, oh, it'd be nice to just say hi, right? So I walk over to her. She's sitting alone, you know, and they all have appointments. So there's appointments coming up quick and blah, blah, blah. And I could tell it was a few minutes to the hour. And I said, hey, Susan, it's Tori Hartman. She looks at me and she goes, I know who you are. And I said, it's nice to see you. She said, it's been a while. She said, listen, I have another appointment. And I was like, okay, nice to see you. Now, my theme that year was cheerful. And I said, oh, nice to see you. And I walked away and went, because it was like, wow, because I gave that up, somebody who didn't like me, look at the reflection it was to me that I didn't like me. I just didn't like myself so much that I wanted to find an agent that didn't like me. So when I have to say to you the truth, which is that it was the Chakra Wisdom Oracle teachings that have changed my life. It wasn't, you know, yes, I did years of therapy. Yes, I did lots of spiritual work. Yes, I read all the books. But it was when I did this work and I learned from it, because I learned through personal wounding how much self-loathing I had, how much of all those things that I carried. And yes, there was a gap, but it was, the interesting thing is that show was the year I sold the Chakra Wisdom Oracle cards to the perfect publisher. They came back with the Toolkit, which we're working on now, and of course the how to read the cards. And the thing that's fascinating about this is I'm even working with an agent that I adore. So when I look at these projects and I look at these things going on, what I can tell you in this is that Pink from Pinkton is truly a journey of learning the neutral observer, which is probably one of the biggest one of the biggest techniques that I've learned, and that the fables and working with them taught me. And again, like I said, that's one of the techniques. But when I talk about it here, and we get into, and I want to talk about Thursday and Friday very briefly and then wrap up. When we look at the connecting with yourself and others, you know, the team becomes a place where you can talk about something disappointing. And the personal, you know, I'm sorry, the solo energy is like looking at a time in your life that was disappointing. So I can look back at that agent and go, you know, I never went back to say hello to her again. And, you know, I didn't need to. It was over. And I could have that perspective of time. So what I want to say to you is, you have that perspective of time now. Take this week to really set your intention and look at where you've come from, and look at your pluses. Look at what you've grown through to get to this point. And I will share this with you, and I think I may have tapped on it prior, but you know, I'm teaching a class now, and one of the women has said, I really want the life of a writer. And she went into, you know, how she's writing things and not finishing them. And I said, but you already have the right life of a writer. We all do that. And she was like, oh, so it sounds to me like you're afraid of visibility, because if you're visible, your writing will get out there. I related to that, ding, ding. And I said, that's the real truth, is that when we get to that, when we tell our truth, then people can see into me, they see the intimacy, and that's what makes a bestseller. That's what makes someone successful. It's not because you want to write something, or because you want to start a store, or because you want to do something. It's because you have to do it no matter what's going on in the world. There's nothing that can stop you. And when we look at Pink from Pinkton, the biggest thing here was the motive was love. He loved her so much he wanted her back. And then he recognized that he had to love himself more. And when he did that, he lost her. But did he lose her, or did he find himself? And that is Pink from Pinkton. So make sure you do the meditation this week to center yourself. And I will see you next week when we go to the final card in this first chakra. And we will do a first chakra wrap up. And I might show you a little trick with the cards. See you then.